In the summer of 1991, a young state trooper climbed into her patrol car and vanished into the night. She never returned. At first, people whispered maybe she ran away, maybe she quit, but her family knew the truth, something dark had happened. For 16 years, there were no answers. No car, no body, just endless silence. Then, after a violent storm swept through the countryside, the river revealed something no one expected: a sunken patrol car. What investigators found inside would shock the town and rewrite everything anyone thought they knew about that night. How did it end up there? Was it an accident, or something far more sinister? You won't believe the secrets the river had been keeping all this time. Watch closely, because the full story will keep you on the edge of your seat until the very last moment. If you want the full truth behind this trooper's disappearance, like, subscribe, and comment below. Tell me where in the world you're watching this from. In 1991, she was only 24 years old, but she already wore the state trooper uniform with pride. To her, it wasn't just a job, it was everything. From the moment she graduated the academy, she told her family that this was her calling. She wanted to protect people. She wanted to be the person who showed up when others were in danger. Her family was proud, but they also worried. Being a trooper wasn't safe. Long nights on the road, responding to accidents, chasing criminals, they knew the risks. But she wasn't afraid. She loved the discipline, the authority, and the chance to serve her community. At family dinners, her father would often say, "She's going to go far. She'll be captain one day." Her mother just smiled, proud but nervous every time she saw her daughter walk out the door in uniform. Friends described her as serious but also kind. She wasn't the type to laugh at every joke, but when she did, people noticed. She was steady, dependable, the kind of person you wanted on your side. In small towns, troopers were more than just officers. They were symbols of safety, and she embraced that role fully. She was respected, admired, and she carried herself with quiet strength. But behind all the pride, there was one thing no one expected. No one believed that in just a few months, her badge, her car, and her very existence would vanish without a trace. It was a Friday night, nothing unusual. She arrived at the station just before sunset, signed in, and greeted her fellow troopers. Roll call was quick. Assignments were given out. Most of it was routine. Her shift wasn't supposed to be dangerous. A standard night patrol. Check for speeders, respond to any calls, keep an eye on backroads. She was relaxed, almost casual. She even joked with another officer about stopping at the diner after her shift. One trooper later remembered how calm she looked that night. Nothing seemed out of place. Her gear was ready. Her radio checked out fine. She got into her patrol car like it was any other night. Before she pulled out of the lot, she waved at another trooper. That small moment would later haunt him, because it was the last time anyone at the station ever saw her alive. The night ahead was quiet at first. Officers logged in their positions, made routine traffic stops, and drove the familiar highways. But she didn't return any calls after a certain hour. At first, nobody noticed. It wasn't unusual for troopers to focus on long stretches of road where radio chatter was low. But later, when the hours dragged on, the silence became concerning. Her car was supposed to return to the station before dawn. When it didn't, officers started asking questions. "Has anyone heard from her?" Dispatch checked. Nothing. That silence, that missing voice on the radio, would mark the start of a nightmare. She drove into the darkness, headlights cutting across empty backroads. It was the kind of night troopers were used to: quiet highways, a few late-night drivers, and long stretches of nothing. She checked in briefly, then drove on. The last recorded movement of her patrol car placed her near a rural highway. After that, everything went still. No witnesses came forward. No drivers reported seeing her in trouble. There was no crash heard, no call for help on the radio. It was as if she simply vanished into the night. Hours later, dispatch tried calling her again. No answer. At first, officers thought maybe her radio was down, but when she still didn't respond, the tone shifted. Radios fail, cars break down, but troopers don't just disappear. By 3 a.m., the station grew uneasy. Her unit number was silent. Her car didn't show up on any checkpoint logs. There was no sign she had stopped anywhere. When the sun rose, her shift should have been over. She should have been back at the station, signing her name on the logbook, but her space stayed empty. Her keys never returned, and the silence, that heavy, terrifying silence, was the only thing left. The first call came just after midnight. Dispatch asked for her location. No answer. That wasn't too unusual. Sometimes radios cut out in certain areas, especially near rivers or thick woods. They tried again, silence. Over the next hour, dispatch kept checking. Still nothing. Other troopers radioed her unit number, asking if she was okay. No reply. The airwaves felt empty, the kind of quiet that made even experienced officers uneasy. By 2 a.m., the shift supervisor noticed something strange. Every other trooper had checked in. Every car had reported its status, except hers. More calls went out. Dispatch raised their voices, hopping sheet here. Still no answer. Then came the worst part. Her patrol car wasn't pinging on any checkpoints. Troopers passing through the usual highways didn't see her car parked anywhere. It was like she had driven straight into the dark and disappeared. By 3 a.m., that silence wasn't just frustrating. It was terrifying. Radios could fail, but officers always found a way to call for help. She hadn't, and that made the silence louder. When the sun broke over the horizon, officers at the station expected to see her walk in tired but safe. Instead, her desk was still empty, her logbook unsigned, her patrol car missing. Her sergeant started calling her home phone. No answer. Then her family was contacted. They hadn't heard from her either. That's when panic spread. She was never late, she never skipped calls. Something was wrong. Troopers fanned out across the county. Backroads, highways, and dirt trails were searched. Every ditch and farm road was checked. Helicopters were called in to scan the fields. Still nothing. Her family arrived at the station, desperate for answers. They begged the officers to find her. Her mother, shaking, asked the question everyone feared. What if something happened to her? By afternoon, the reality set in. This wasn't a late return. This wasn't a broken radio. A state trooper had vanished on duty and nobody knew how or why. By sunrise, word spread fast. A trooper was missing. In a small town, news like that didn't stay quiet for long. People woke up to blocked roads, police cars parked on corners, and helicopters thundering overhead. Neighbors stood on porches, whispering to each other. Kids asked why school buses were being rerouted. Farmers on tractors stopped to watch as search teams combed fields. The entire community could feel it. Something was very wrong. Police officers knocked on doors, asking if anyone had seen her patrol car. Flyers with her face began appearing in shop windows by mid-morning, but every search team returned with the same report. Nothing. Helicopters swept the riverbanks. Dogs were brought in to sniff the woods. Officers checked every back road, every trail, every abandoned barn. Still, there was no sign of her. By noon, fear had settled like a shadow over the town. People locked doors, kept kids inside, and prayed for answers. A trooper was supposed to be the one protecting them. Now she was the one who needed saving, and nobody knew where she was. By the second day, the case had grown too big for the local station to handle. State investigators rolled in with unmarked cars, clipboards, and questions. Reporters followed close behind, sticking cameras in the faces of anyone who might know something. The search expanded across counties. Rivers were dragged with nets. Forests were combed in lines of officers. Drivers were stopped at checkpoints, asked if they'd seen a patrol car on the road. Every hour without an answer only deepened the dread. Her family held on to hope, but fear showed on their faces. Her father kept repeating, she wouldn't just leave. She wouldn't. Rumors started flying. Some said she might have been ambushed. Others whispered that maybe she had discovered something dangerous. The truth was, no one knew. All the town knew was this: one of their troopers had gone out on patrol and vanished. The first helicopters rose just after dawn. They hovered over rivers, scanning every inch of water with bright lights. Their engines roared, cutting through the quiet morning air. Divers were sent into the dark, muddy waters below. Each one moved carefully, feeling along the riverbed with hands and poles, searching for any sign of her patrol car or the trooper herself. The current was strong. The water was cold and thick with mud. Visibility was nearly zero. The divers had to move slowly, checking every possible hiding spot. Branches and debris snagged their gear. Every movement was exhausting, but they couldn't stop. Every minute counted. Back on the helicopters, officers scanned roads and fields, calling in reports of anything unusual. They spotted old cars, fallen trees, and animals along the banks, but nothing that belonged to her. Every hour felt like a race against time. The longer they searched without success, the heavier the tension became. People on the shore watched nervously. Volunteers and townsfolk lined the riverbanks, hopping to see a sign of her, even a small clue. Boats were launched to drag the shallows, nets cutting through the water again and again, but the river remained silent. By late afternoon, even the experienced divers and officers began to feel a creeping sense of dread. Hours of searching had brought nothing. The sun dipped low and the shadows over the river grew long. Yet no matter how tired, no one gave up. Every second mattered. Somewhere in that water, they believed, was a clue that would answer the question no one wanted to hear. Where was she? While the helicopters hovered over rivers, ground teams moved into the forests and backroads. Officers brought K-9 units trained to detect scents. Each dog strained on its leash, nose close to the ground, ears alert. They ran through thick brush, over fallen logs, and across muddy fields, searching for even the faintest hint of the missing trooper. Handlers called out to the dogs, guiding them along paths and trails. The animals sniffed, whined, and barked at certain spots. Sometimes they stopped, tense, signaling that they detected something. Officers would dig or look closer, but too often it was nothing, just a raccoon, a deer, or the smell of old water. Search teams worked in lines, moving methodically through every section of forest, checking every backroad and abandoned barn. Volunteers followed, shining flashlights, calling out her name. The trooper's boots, uniform, or car could be anywhere. Every lead had to be followed, no matter how small. Hours passed. The dogs caught scents that led nowhere. They barked at false trails. Every failure added weight to the fear settling over the teams. Officers began to whisper to each other about the impossible odds of finding her. But they couldn't stop. They combed fields and woods for miles. The sun fell behind the trees, leaving the search in twilight. Shadows stretched long, and every crackling branch made hearts jump. Yet, no matter how tired or frustrated, the search continued. Every dog, every handler, every officer held onto one hope: to find her alive, or at least find proof of what had happened. Flyers were posted everywhere. Telephone poles along main streets, gas stations at the edge of town, and storefront windows in small neighborhoods all showed the same photo: her smiling face in uniform. She looked calm, confident, ready to serve. People passed the flyers daily. Some stared for a long moment, recognizing her from town, remembering her kindness and dedication. Others walked by quickly, pretending not to notice, not wanting to think about what could have happened. The images weren't just reminders, they were calls for help. Officers and volunteers handed them out at busy intersections. Drivers rolled down windows, taking copies to hang at their workplaces. Schools put her photo on bulletin boards, asking children and staff to be alert. The trooper's face became impossible to ignore. Every store, every corner, every gas station reminded the town of her absence. Her family saw it too, each flyer cutting deeper into their hope. She was everywhere, in papers, on walls, on everyone's minds, yet nowhere at all. As days turned into weeks, tips began to flood in. People called from nearby towns and even other states, claiming they had seen her. One caller insisted she had been spotted at a diner hundreds of miles away, smiling, chatting with strangers. Another said they saw her car parked near a gas station late at night. Each lead brought a spark of hope. Officers raced to investigate, hearts pounding. Could she really be alive? Could someone have kept her hidden, or had she somehow escaped danger? But as the evidence was checked, hope began to crumble. Surveillance cameras didn't show her at the diner. Witnesses' memories didn't line up. Phone records didn't match. Every promising lead collapsed under scrutiny. It was exhausting. Officers who had once felt confident in their search began to feel frustrated, even hopeless. The clock kept ticking, yet the trooper remained missing. Each false sighting reminded the town and her family that the answers were still out of reach. Even the smallest lead had to be followed. A shadow of hope lingered in every call, every tip, every report. But every time it faded, the weight of uncertainty pressed heavier on everyone involved. By the end of the week, the excitement of new information turned into fatigue. Every volunteer and officer felt it. The town was waiting. Her family was waiting. And yet, the trooper was still gone. Her parents refused to let her disappear from memory. Every day, they appeared on local news, begging for help. Their voices trembled, but their message was strong. Please help us find her. She would never leave on her own. Something is wrong. Her siblings handed out flyers at busy intersections, spoke to anyone who would listen, and made calls to every possible contact. They refused to give up. Every small lead, no matter how weak, was followed. Friends and neighbors joined in. Volunteers went door to door, posting flyers, asking if anyone had seen her. The town could feel their persistence. Even as weeks passed, her family's determination never wavered. At the station, officers were reminded daily that this case wasn't just another file. It was personal. The family's grief, their hope, their unshakable belief that she would be found, kept everyone on edge. Her parents spoke at town meetings, urging the public not to forget her. They asked people to watch the roads, check their properties, and report anything unusual. They pleaded for the community to act as if she were their own daughter. Even when other news faded, they refused to let her disappear from headlines or minds. Their persistence kept the search alive. It kept the trooper from being forgotten. And in every call, every flyer, and every interview, they made one thing clear: they would never stop looking for her. Months passed and the files kept growing. Every lead, tip, and report was carefully documented. Detectives stacked the pages high, each folder marked with her name. Yet for all the paperwork, there were no answers. Every promising clue ended in a dead end. Officers sifted through hours of phone calls, witness statements, and sightings. Every detail mattered, but nothing led to her. The files became a symbol of frustration, a reminder of the trooper who had vanished without a trace. Investigators worked long hours. They interviewed locals, checked cameras, scoured backroads again and again. Volunteers combed fields and forests. Helicopters still hovered over rivers. But despite all the effort, the case remained unsolved. The thick, growing file began to weigh on everyone involved. It wasn't just paper. It was hope fatting into doubt. Every detective knew that a missing trooper should not disappear this way. And yet, the case dragged on. Each new report brought a flicker of possibility, but each time it ended in disappointment. The files grew heavier, not just in size but in meaning. They were proof that the search had failed so far, that the answers were still out there somewhere, hidden in the shadows. As the months stretched into a year, the town grew restless. Conversations in diners, bars, and workplaces became hushed whispers. People speculated, asking the same questions over and over. Was it an accident? Did she get kidnapped? Or was there something darker, a cover-up? No one knew the truth. Officers remained tight-lipped, families hoped and prayed, and the trooper's name slowly faded from daily headlines. But the silence did not bring peace. Instead, it grew louder, heavier. Rumors filled the gaps left by unanswered questions. Someone claimed they had seen her car parked far away. Others whispered that she had uncovered something dangerous on duty. Every story had holes, but the town clung to them anyway. Families talked late into the night, wondering who could be trusted. Fear mixed with curiosity. The longer she stayed missing, the more questions there were and the fewer answers. Even new troopers at the station heard the rumors. They learned the story from older officers, told in fragments and cautious tones. The mystery hung over the town like a storm cloud. People avoided certain roads, wondered about strange lights in the night, and shared stories they weren't sure were true. Every passing day reminded everyone that the trooper's disappearance was real and unsolved. The silence wasn't empty. It was heavy with tension, fear, and doubt. And through it all, one thing was clear. Someone, somewhere, knew what happened. But the town, the family, and the officers still had no way to find out. By the mid-1990s, the trooper's disappearance had become something more than a missing person case. It was a ghost story. People whispered about it in diners, in church parking lots, and on back porches late at night. Every conversation had a theory. Some said she had run off, tired of the job. Others believed she had been kidnapped by someone who wanted her gone. Teenagers dared each other to drive past the roads where her car had last been seen. Small children asked their parents why the trooper had never returned. Even police officers heard the rumors. New recruits asked older officers if the stories were true. The older officers would only shake their heads, muttering that some things were better left unknown. In the town, the air felt different. Every unfamiliar car, every strange light, every sound in the night sparked fear. People started locking doors earlier, checking their children more often, and avoiding back roads. The rumors didn't stop at town limits. Nearby counties whispered the same tales. Every mention of her name carried tension. She was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Her story became a cautionary tale, a reminder that even someone trained to protect others could disappear without warning. Some locals began to believe the trooper hadn't simply vanished. They thought she had stumbled onto something dangerous, something powerful people didn't want anyone to know. Stories spread about calls she had made, reports she had filed, and incidents she had seen on her patrols. Some said she had been in the right place at the wrong time. Others whispered that she had seen corruption in the town, corruption that reached higher than anyone wanted to admit. The idea that she knew too much gave her disappearance a darker edge. Suddenly, it wasn't just a tragedy. It became a warning. People speculated that she had been silenced, her knowledge buried along with her. Detectives noticed the rumors too. They logged witness statements mentioning odd encounters, men in suits watching her car, or strangers following her on patrol. Nothing concrete ever appeared, but the whispers kept growing. Even families of other officers discussed it quietly. They feared for their loved ones. If someone could make a trooper disappear, they thought, what chance did anyone else have? The story became almost mythic. The trooper wasn't just missing, she had become a symbol of danger, of secrets too deep to uncover, and of a truth that might never come to light. Years later, investigators pieced together reports of a late-night call she had answered the very night she vanished. No one knew who had called. No one knew why. The logs showed a blank. Dispatch had no record of it. Some witnesses remembered seeing her patrol car parked near a bridge, headlights on, around the time of the call. Others said they heard the faint sound of her voice over the radio, speaking to someone, a call that never made it into any report. Detectives tried to find the source. Phone records, call logs, and interviews produced nothing. Every trail ran cold. The mystery only deepened. Locals began to whisper again. Was it a routine call or something else? Had she discovered something on that call that made her a target? The answers were gone, hidden in shadows that no one could reach. Several witnesses came forward, months after the disappearance, recalling something strange. On the night she vanished, they had seen a patrol car parked near an old, seldom-used bridge. Its headlights were on, cutting through the darkness, but no one was inside. The witnesses didn't know each other. Some were driving home late, others were walking along the riverbank. Their stories matched in small details: the patrol car, the bridge, the quiet night. Investigators returned to the scene. They found nothing. No footprints, no signs of struggle, no tire tracks beyond the usual wear of the road. The bridge had been empty for decades before and after that night. Nature had reclaimed the edges, and the river flowed silently beneath. Yet the memory remained. For the witnesses, it was a clear image that refused to fade. They shared their stories with detectives and neighbors, who in turn repeated them in hushed tones. Soon, the bridge became part of the legend of the missing trooper. Even without evidence, the sighting fueled the town's unease. People avoided the bridge at night. The rumor spread. Maybe the bridge held the answer, or maybe it was just where someone wanted her seen last. Either way, it was a shadow over the community, a reminder that someone had vanished and left only questions behind. Locals whispered about criminals who might have had reasons to make her disappear. Stories circulated that certain people she had investigated, Men and women involved in illegal activity were angry. Some had been stopped on the roads, others had seen her reports filed in the station. The idea took hold. Maybe this wasn't an accident. Maybe someone had decided that a trooper who followed the rules too closely was a threat. A warning had to be sent, and it had to be permanent. Detectives explored these leads carefully. They questioned people who had criminal records, neighbors who had noticed suspicious activity, and former colleagues who might have overheard threats. Nothing concrete appeared. No one admitted to anything, but the fear lingered. In the town, even ordinary people spoke in low voices about the ones who shouldn't be crossed. They suggested that someone powerful had the ability to silence her. Was it revenge? A message to others? Or something even more calculated, meant to bury secrets deeper than anyone could imagine? Her family heard the whispers too. It was terrifying to think someone could vanish her daughter with impunity. But these shadows, these unproven stories, only fueled the dread. Every dark alley, every unknown car on the road, every unfamiliar face became a potential threat in their minds. The town grew quieter at night. Streets once safe now felt dangerous. And everywhere the trooper's name was spoken in fear, not hope. Her disappearance wasn't just a mystery anymore. It was a warning. Detectives followed every lead the town provided. They tracked sightings, interviewed potential witnesses, and dug into every rumor. Each time, they thought they were getting close. A tip would surface, someone claiming they had seen her car, a strange figure near the bridge, or even someone who knew she had been in trouble. Officers rushed to investigate, hearts pounded with hope. But every promising clue collapsed. Cameras showed nothing. Footprints led to empty fields. Phone records proved false. Nothing connected to her disappearance. The more they investigated, the more frustrated they became. Every road they searched ended in a dead end. Every witness contradicted another. Each new tip seemed to bring more questions than answers. Even experienced detectives felt the weight of failure. It was unlike any case they had handled. A trained, careful officer had disappeared in her own town, and no one could say why. The file on her case grew thicker by the day. Reports piled up, but proof remained out of reach. Every lead brought a flicker of hope, but that flicker quickly died. Her family began to feel eyes on them. Simple things made them uneasy. A car parked too long at the end of their street, a stranger asking questions about their daughter, a shadow outside a window at night. They wondered if someone knew more than they were saying. Was it an accident, or something far more dangerous? Every unanswered question made their home feel smaller, more claustrophobic. Her parents spoke in hushed tones at night, worrying aloud that someone had followed her that fateful evening. Her siblings watched every stranger carefully, mistrusting people they once trusted. Every small noise became alarming. Every visitor caused tension. Even daily routines felt risky. Mailboxes were checked cautiously. Phones were answered with caution. The fear wasn't just in their heads. Their community shared the unease. People whispered about who could be responsible, but no one had answers. Everyone remembered her smile, her dedication, her sense of duty, and the fact that she was gone without explanation. Yet her family refused to give up hope. Even with the fear, even with the uncertainty, they pushed forward. They continued to ask questions, hand out flyers, and reach out to anyone who might know something. The dread lingered, but so did their determination. Every day was a struggle between hope and fear. They lived in a world where their daughter's absence was a constant, haunting reminder that the truth could be darker than anyone dared imagine. Years passed. Birthdays came and went, each one marked by a missing presence. Her chair remained empty at the table, a silent reminder that she had not returned. Christmas mornings felt hollow. Wrapping paper was torn open, gifts exchanged, but every celebration included a shadow of sadness. Stockings were hung and her name was called, yet no laughter followed. Anniversaries, family gatherings, even small milestones became bittersweet. Friends and neighbors remembered her, but her family felt the absence sharply. Photos on walls and shelves showed her smiling in uniform, proud and full of life. Each image carried the weight of what they no longer had. Despite the passing years, her family clung to hope. Every holiday, every birthday, every ordinary day was a chance she might return. They refused to give up entirely, even as reality pressed in. The community tried to support them. Friends brought meals, neighbors offered condolences, and colleagues remembered her service. But nothing could fill the empty spaces where she had been. Even ordinary routines were reminders of loss. A plate left untouched, a light still on in the station, a patrol car parked empty, everything spoke of absence. Yet her family's love never wavered. They remembered her not as missing, but as the trooper they knew. And in that memory, they found the strength to endure each passing holiday, clinging to hope even when it seemed impossibly thin. Time took its toll. Her parents aged more quickly than anyone expected. Lines deepened on their faces, hands trembled when they held each other, and their steps slowed under the weight of waiting. Each year without answers pressed heavier on them. Medical visits revealed stress-related illnesses, blood pressure spikes, and sleepless nights. The worry for their daughter became a constant companion, impossible to ignore. They kept her room as it had always been. Clothes folded neatly, photographs in frames, badges displayed with pride. It was a shrine of memory, a way to hold her close even as the years stretched on. Family friends noticed the changes. They offered help, encouraged breaks, and sometimes pleaded with them to move forward. But moving forward was impossible. The uncertainty of her fate hung over them, stronger than the advice of anyone else. Her mother spent hours staring at the phone, imagining it might ring. Her father revisited every possible scenario in his mind, wondering if a detail had been missed in the early days of the investigation. Every missed call, every rumor, every tip that led nowhere became a burden they carried daily. Even the smallest events reminded them of loss. A car passing by at night, a shadow near the window, a newspaper story about missing persons, everything kept their daughter's absence painfully alive. Through it all, they remained determined. They never stopped hopping for answers, never stopped asking questions, never stopped believing that someday, after 16 long years, they might learn the truth. At the station, years had passed. New recruits walked through the halls, helmets in hand, eager to learn, unaware of the history surrounding them. On one wall hung a photo of a young trooper, uniform crisp, smile bright. A sergeant pointed to it, explaining she had vanished years ago. The recruits nodded politely, but their eyes showed no recognition. They had never met her. The story was distant, almost unreal to them. Officers who had served alongside her whispered in corners, recalling her dedication, her humor, the way she carried herself with pride. But those memories were fading. Each passing year meant fewer people who remembered her firsthand. The case file on her disappearance sat on a dusty shelf. It was thick, heavy, full of notes, leads, and dead ends. The newer officers glanced at it, some curious, most intimidated. They understood it was important, but the immediacy was gone. The urgency had faded. Outside the station, patrol cars rolled past, roads remained busy, and life went on. To the new generation, the missing trooper was a name, a photo, a story told in fragments. The living remembered differently from those who had waited years, watched the days pass, and hoped every day for her return. Time had buried the immediacy of her case. But for the family and those who truly remembered, the memory remained alive, haunting, unresolved, demanding justice that the years had not yet delivered. The news cycle moved on. Headlines focused on new events, new crimes, and new stories. The missing trooper's disappearance became a memory, a cautionary tale whispered less and less. The town adjusted. People accepted her absence. Roads that were once blocked for searches became ordinary streets. Fields and forests that had been combed repeatedly returned to their normal quiet. Life went on. Neighbors went about their days without thinking of the past. Shops filled with new faces. Children grew up, unaware of the trooper who had vanished when they were small. The community continued its rhythm, guided by the passage of time. But her family refused to let her memory fade. They maintained every tradition, kept her room intact, and remembered every birthday, every anniversary, every ordinary day without her. Friends and neighbors sometimes saw their devotion and were reminded that she had once been part of the town's life, not just a story. Even as the world moved on, they kept her presence alive. Photographs remained on walls. Badges were polished and displayed. Every phone call, every tip, every conversation about her ensured she was never forgotten. Her family's hope became their quiet rebellion against the passage of time. While the town moved forward, they held on to the past. They refused to accept that she might be gone forever. In 2007, a violent storm tore through the countryside. Rain fell in sheets, relentless and unyielding, pounding rooftops, fields, and rivers. Streams quickly became raging torrents, sweeping debris in every direction. Bridges strained under the pressure of swollen waters. Roads that had been safe for decades disappeared beneath the flood. Cars were abandoned, trees uprooted, and power lines snapped. The town was battered, residents huddled in homes, waiting for the storm to end. Emergency services worked tirelessly. Rescue teams navigated the raging waters, moving from one stranded vehicle to another. Helicopters circled overhead, their spotlights cutting through sheets of rain. Roads were closed, evacuation orders issued, and people feared the worst. The storm lasted for days, relentless and unforgiving. Rivers rose far beyond their banks, flooding fields, submerging backroads, and leaving a trail of destruction. Everything that had been hidden or forgotten was pushed and stirred by the force of the waters. Amid the chaos, most people were focused on survival. The storm didn't discriminate. Homes, bridges, and farmland were all vulnerable. The town watched, powerless, as the waters reshaped their landscape, leaving uncertainty and destruction in their wake. When the floodwaters finally receded, the town began to assess the damage. Roads had vanished, debris was scattered everywhere, and the riverbanks were stripped bare. People walked cautiously, surveying the destruction left behind. Then something unusual caught their eyes. Along the muddy edge of the riverbed, a piece of rusted metal poked through the silt. It was too large to be just junk. Locals approached carefully, curiosity mixed with unease. A call was made to the police. Investigators arrived quickly, cautious and prepared. They saw the same thing, a large, rusted vehicle partially buried in mud and branches. The shape was unmistakable. It was a patrol car. The discovery stunned everyone. Questions flooded their minds. How had it gone unnoticed for 16 years? What had hidden it so well? Slowly, officers began the careful process of pulling it free, revealing the car in full. The town gathered quietly, whispers spreading. People who had long forgotten her face now saw the badge number, the faded paint, the telltale signs of age and decay. The missing trooper's vehicle had been lying in the river all along, hidden by time and nature, waiting for the storm to reveal it. For her family, the moment was overwhelming. 16 years of hope, fear, and unanswered questions converged on that single sight. They were finally seeing proof that she had been there all along, and yet the mystery of what had really happened was far from solved. It started with a single phone call. The voice on the line was urgent, tense, and almost trembling. "You'd better come look at this," the caller said. Within minutes, the sheriff and deputies were on the road, racing to the muddy riverbed. Rain still lingered in the air, the storm's destruction fresh in everyone's mind. Every passing second felt heavy, filled with anticipation. When they arrived, the sight stopped them cold. Rusted metal poked through the mud, shapes that no one could ignore. The sheriff squinted, taking it in, heart pounding. It wasn't just debris, it was a patrol car, the one that had belonged to the missing trooper. Officers moved carefully, pulling back branches and mud. The vehicle had been buried for 16 years, hidden by river currents, silt, and time. The discovery felt unreal, like a ghost returning from the past. Word spread quickly. Locals gathered quietly at the edges, whispers filling the air. Cameras clicked. Phones recorded. Everyone sensed that something enormous had just happened. The call had broken the long silence. 16 years of uncertainty, fear, and unanswered questions were about to change. The missing trooper was finally connected to a place, a moment, a physical presence. The river had revealed its secret, and the case was no longer just a story. It was real, tangible, and immediate. For her family, the moment was overwhelming. Tears flowed. Hands shook. Years of waiting, of wondering, of hopping and fearing, all converged on this single point. The silence had ended, but the mystery was far from solved. Divers suited up, their equipment heavy, nerves tense. The river was swollen from the storm, murky brown and fast-moving. Visibility was nearly zero. Every movement in the water felt dangerous. They slipped beneath the surface one by one. The current pushed against them, strong and unpredictable. Every second felt like a fight, not just against the water but against fear itself. The divers scanned carefully, touching branches and mud, moving slowly so as not to disturb the silt. The riverbed was littered with debris, logs, trash, and rocks displaced by the storm. Each item could hide something or be nothing at all. Hours of searching brought frustration. Nothing stood out. The current pulled at them. Small air bubbles rose, signaling the passage of time. The divers communicated with hand signals, eyes wide with tension. Then, almost imperceptibly, a shape emerged from the mud. A large, rigid form, not natural, not part of the river. Hearts raced. Could it be? Every diver froze briefly, confirming what their eyes were telling them. The shape became clearer as they cleared debris. Branches and mud clung to it, but it was unmistakable. A vehicle, partially buried, waiting silently in the riverbed. Something that had been missing for 16 long years. The patrol car was a ghost from the past. Half buried in mud and tangled in branches, it had been hidden by years of river currents and storms. The metal was rusted, paint faded, but details remained. Investigators approached cautiously. The license plate, partially visible under debris, matched the missing trooper's vehicle. The unit number on the side confirmed it beyond doubt. It was hers. People who had waited 16 years stared in disbelief. Some gasped. Some whispered prayers. For the first time, the trooper's absence had a physical presence, a proof that she had been here all along. The car was carefully pulled from the river. Officers and onlookers watched, silent, hearts pounding. Mud fell away, revealing more of the vehicle, more clues to its long-hidden history. Every detail told a story. The scratches on the side, the wear on the tires, the badge still on the dashboard. For the family, the moment was almost unbearable. Tears streamed freely. Hands shook. Memories, hope, and grief collided in a single instant. 16 years of not knowing were concentrated into one tangible reality. Yet the discovery was only the beginning. The car's presence confirmed her fate but raised new questions. How had it stayed hidden so long? What really happened that night? Who, if anyone, had been involved? News of the discovery spread like wildfire. Word traveled from house to house, from the diner to the gas station, and soon, locals were rushing to the riverbank. Families climbed over mud and debris, children held close to their parents. Police kept the crowd back, but people edged closer, desperate to see what had been hidden for 16 years. The winch on a large truck was connected to the patrol car. Slowly, carefully, it began to pull the vehicle toward the surface. Mud and water cascaded down, exposing more of the long-lost car with every inch. Crowds fell silent. No one spoke. The air was thick with tension, disbelief, and fear. Some people covered their mouths in shock. Others simply stared, frozen by the reality in front of them. Veteran officers exchanged grim nods. This was no longer speculation. This was proof. The patrol car of the missing trooper had returned, and the town was confronting a moment it had only imagined for years. Photographers and reporters captured every moment, phones recorded, cameras flashed. Every person present understood the gravity. The missing trooper's story was now tied to a physical place, a tangible truth. As the car crested the water, a collective breath seemed to escape from the crowd. 16 years of mystery, hope, and fear condensed into this single, shocking moment. The vehicle broke through the surface, mangled and rusted, water dripping from every corner. It looked like a ghost, rising from the riverbed, bringing the past back with it. Witnesses stared in disbelief. The car they had imagined for 16 years was real. Every scratch, dent, and patch of rust told a story of time and concealment. The uniform she had worn, the badge inside, the dashboard details, all reminders of her presence. For her family, the moment was almost unbearable. Mothers and fathers, siblings, friends, and colleagues felt the weight of 16 years of absence and grief. Some wept openly. Others held each other, trembling at the sight of the vehicle. Investigators approached cautiously. They documented every detail, careful not to disturb anything that could hold evidence. Each observation could reveal how the car ended up buried for so long. Locals whispered quietly, calling her name under their breath. It was as if she had returned to remind them all that she had never been forgotten. The vehicle, the mud, the branches, and the river currents had kept her hidden, but she was finally visible. The river's reveal brought closure to some questions, but it opened others. How had no one noticed it before? What had caused her disappearance? Why had it remained submerged for 16 years? For the witnesses, the patrol car was more than metal. It was the ghost of a trooper, a physical reminder of dedication, duty, and sacrifice. It demanded respect, reflection, and recognition. For a brief moment, the town stood still, honoring her without words, acknowledging a life cut short and a mystery that had lasted far too long. Investigators worked carefully, prying open the driver's side door. The metal groaned under the effort, twisted and rusted from 16 years beneath the river. As the door swung open, the smell of decay hit immediately. It was subtle but unmistakable. Every officer flinched slightly, prepared for what they would find. Inside, skeletal remains sat in the driver's seat. The uniform was still visible, faded and waterlogged, but unmistakably hers. The badge, the patches, even the worn edges of the jacket confirmed the identity. Time had stripped away the flesh, but the presence remained. The posture, the seatbelt still in place, the remnants of the patrol car interior. It was as if she had been waiting silently for someone to find her. Investigators moved slowly, documenting every detail. Photos, notes, and careful measurements were taken. Every aspect of the vehicle and its occupant could provide clues. The remains confirmed the reality the town had feared for years. The missing trooper had been here all along. The river had kept her hidden, a silent guardian of the secret. Every ripple, every silt layer, every branch that had covered the car for years had preserved this tragic truth. The discovery was both shocking and horrifying. It confirmed what her family had feared but had never allowed themselves to fully believe. The years of searching, hopping, and fearing had culminated in this moment. Every person at the riverbank understood the gravity. This was no longer speculation, rumor, or theory. This was undeniable proof, staring them in the face, a haunting reminder of loss and the passage of time. Her family stood just feet away, unable to move at first. The shock was immediate. 16 years of waiting, wondering, and hopping came crashing down in one instant. Her mother's knees buckled. Her father's hands shook uncontrollably. Siblings covered their faces, tears streaming freely. The weight of the unknown, carried for so long, exploded all at once. Neighbors and officers gave them space, understanding that no words could help. The grief was raw, immediate, and unstoppable. Every hug, every sob, every whispered name carried the memory of years spent longing for her return. For the family, the river was no longer just a place of searching. It had become the final resting point of their loved one, a place of answers, and yet a place of pain. The skeletal remains confirmed the worst but also gave a sense of closure. The trooper who had vanished so suddenly was finally found. The realization that she had been here all along, waiting silently beneath the river's surface, broke hearts while simultaneously answering the unending question: where had she been all this time? The town was silent, stunned by the revelation. The patrol car had been there all along, buried beneath layers of silt, branches, and mud. For 16 years it had remained hidden, untouched by human hands. Everyone who had searched the river before was forced to reckon with this truth. Divers, officers, and locals had combed the waters countless times, yet the currents and shifting mud had kept it concealed. Nature itself had been the keeper of the secret. It wasn't stolen. It wasn't abandoned somewhere else. It wasn't part of a hoax. The evidence was clear. The river had claimed it, preserving the vehicle and its occupant while the world moved on unaware. Shock rippled through the crowd at the riverbank. People whispered to each other, struggling to comprehend the simple, brutal truth. 16 years of mystery had been buried beneath their feet, hidden in plain sight. For her family, this revelation was both devastating and oddly relieving. They finally knew she hadn't disappeared by choice. The trooper hadn't walked away. She hadn't been lost to the unknown. The river had held her secret, and now, at last, it was revealed. The long silence of the case was broken, but it left behind questions that would haunt the town for years to come. The river had been quiet, but it had not forgotten. Investigators moved carefully around the rusted patrol car. They wore gloves and masks, aware that every inch might hold a clue. The vehicle had been underwater for 16 years, yet some details were still visible. Dents and scratches on the side suggested impact with branches and rocks. The frame was twisted in a way that indicated forceful movement, not just gradual sinking. Mirrors hung loose. The windshield was shattered, but the pattern of cracks gave hints about what might have happened. Inside the car, the steering wheel and dashboard were corroded, yet certain elements remained intact. The badge on the dashboard, the radio equipment, and the remnants of maps showed the trooper had been in full control of her duties up until the end. Investigators photographed every angle, took careful notes, and discussed quietly. Each mark told part of the story, but the full picture remained unclear. Had the car slipped off the road? Had something forced it? Or had a sudden accident thrown it into the river? They measured angles, examined bends in the metal, and studied the surrounding terrain. The river's edge, nearby rocks and slopes all held information that could reveal the cause. Every observation was cross-checked with old reports and witness statements. Despite all the evidence, questions lingered. Nothing could explain why the patrol car had remained hidden for so long. Nature had buried it well, and even now, some mysteries stayed locked within the wreck. Nearby, investigators examined the dirt and mud along the old road. Skid marks were faint but visible, pressed into the soft earth by tires long gone. The pattern told a story of sudden action. The car had swerved violently, as if avoiding something or trying to regain control. The marks curved sharply toward the river's edge, ending abruptly where the patrol car had plunged. Officers photographed the scene from multiple angles. Measurements were taken, sketches made, all to understand the exact path of the vehicle. Every detail mattered. Even the slightest change in angle could reveal if it had been an accident or something more deliberate. Questions multiplied. Why had she swerved? Was it slippery conditions, an obstacle, or another vehicle? Could someone have forced her off the road? The evidence was physical, clear, yet silent. It could tell them what happened, but not why. Investigators compared the tire marks with the vehicle's wheelbase and weight. The results confirmed a sudden, sharp turn at speed. The car left the pavement in a way that suggested panic, control lost in seconds, with no time for a call or warning. The road, the skid marks, and the river's edge all painted part of the story. Yet every answer brought new questions. Nature may have revealed the car, but the human story behind the crash remained tangled, complex, and haunting. Experts examined the river carefully, noting how the currents flowed, how silt built up, and how storms reshaped the banks. They explained that over 16 years, shifting water and mud could easily bury a vehicle completely. Strong currents had likely moved the car multiple times, pressing it deeper into the riverbed. Branches and debris added weight, holding it in place. Floods brought more sediment, covering every trace. The car had been hidden by nature itself. Divers and investigators studied the riverbed patterns. Maps and old surveys showed how the water had changed over the years. It wasn't just the initial crash. Years of natural movement had kept the car invisible to anyone searching before. Still, not everyone was convinced. Some locals whispered that the river had helped hide something, not by accident. Others speculated about foul play, thinking someone might have known exactly where to conceal it. Investigators stayed cautious. The science explained how a car could remain hidden for so long. The river had both protected and concealed the patrol car. It was a tragic combination of nature and circumstance. Even with this explanation, the mystery of her last moments lingered. How she ended up there, What caused her to lose control, and whether anyone else had been involved were questions the river could not answer. Officials examined the road leading to the river. It was narrow, winding, and dangerous, especially late at night. Rain had soaked the asphalt, making it slick and treacherous. They leaned toward a tragic accident. A single misstep, a sudden swerve, or a momentary loss of control could easily send the patrol car over the edge. Tire marks, vehicle weight, and road conditions all supported this theory. Weather reports confirmed heavy rainfall that night. Visibility was poor, and shadows from trees could have masked obstacles. The patrol car had likely encountered a small hazard, forcing a sharp turn. Once the wheels left the pavement, there was no chance to stop before plunging into the river. The evidence seemed consistent: a sudden swerve, loss of control, and a violent crash. Nature did the rest, hiding the car until the storm of 2007 revealed it. Despite this official explanation, doubts remained. Her family struggled to accept it fully. Could it have been something more? Someone causing the crash, or just fate? Investigators documented everything, but the story still felt incomplete. The accident theory explained the mechanics, but it could not explain every question, every fear, every whisper from the past. The patrol car had revealed its secrets, yet the human story behind it, the trooper's last moments, remained partially hidden, suspended between evidence and imagination. Even as officials called it a tragic accident, whispers spread through the town. Locals stared at the river and the road, imagining a different story. Something about the crash felt wrong to them. Some said the car looked forced off the road. The tire marks, the angle of the crash, and the sudden swerve didn't fully add up. Others claimed she had been chasing someone, or someone had chased her. Theories multiplied, each more unsettling than the last. At the diner, at the gas station, and in backyards, people debated quietly. Could a patrol car really lose control in that spot, or had someone made sure it did? Questions hung in the air like fog over the river. Even younger officers at the station whispered about it. They had heard the stories, read the reports, and yet something in the details felt suspicious. Every time they looked at the patrol car's remains, a chill ran down their spines. Some suggested the river had hidden evidence intentionally. Others believed someone had timed the accident, knowing the storm could conceal the car. Each theory seemed far-fetched, but nothing about the discovery felt simple. For the family, these rumors were both frightening and compelling. Could the official accident report really be true, or were there forces at work that no one wanted exposed? 16 years of unanswered questions now collided with new possibilities. Whispers of corruption resurfaced in town. People speculated that the trooper had discovered something dangerous during her patrol. Some believed someone with power didn't want the truth revealed. Stories circulated about late-night calls she had responded to, cases she had worked, and people she might have seen. Could her disappearance be connected to something bigger? Investigators acknowledged the rumors but had no proof. Still, the questions persisted. The family wondered if her patrol had exposed secrets someone wanted hidden. The town debated quietly, tension lingering like a shadow over every conversation. The river had revealed her car, the skeletal remains, and part of the truth, but it had also reopened old fears. Who could have wanted her silenced? Why now? These questions remained unanswered, haunting everyone who remembered her. Officials officially closed the case, labeling it a tragic accident. Reports were filed, photos archived, and statements recorded. To the outside world, the story had ended, but her family refused to accept it. 16 years of searching, waiting, and hopping had shaped their understanding of what happened. Now, confronted with the accident report, they felt unsatisfied, uneasy, and angry. Every dent, every scratch, every curve of the river and road raised questions. Why hadn't the car been found sooner? Why did the crash happen at that exact spot? Were there forces at work no one would ever admit? They remembered her dedication, her skill, her knowledge of the roads she patrolled. To them, a mistake seemed impossible. Something about the official explanation felt incomplete, too convenient, leaving a gap where the truth should be. They spoke to reporters, friends, and neighbors, insisting she deserved more than a simple accident label. Their grief combined with suspicion, keeping the story alive in the public's mind. The family's refusal to accept closure ensured the trooper's memory remained a topic of discussion, investigation, and debate. Even after the case files were closed, their questions and suspicions continued to linger, haunting the town as much as the river had haunted their hearts. The day was gray, heavy with clouds, as if the weather reflected the sorrow of the moment. Her family gathered at the cemetery, standing close, some holding hands, others with heads bowed. After 16 years, they were finally here, facing the reality of loss. The casket rested at the front, draped with her state trooper flag. Her uniform, cleaned and pressed, lay atop it. Every badge, every emblem reminded the family of her dedication, courage, and commitment. It was both comforting and heartbreaking to see her like this, restored in honor but gone forever. Friends, colleagues, and officers from surrounding towns stood in formation. Their expressions were solemn. They remembered her bravery, her diligence, the countless patrols she had completed without incident. This funeral was more than a family event. It was the acknowledgement of a life devoted to duty. Prayers were said, speeches were given, and tears flowed freely. Stories of her life, small acts of kindness, and heroic moments were shared. The weight of 16 years of unanswered questions pressed down on everyone, but for the first time, there was a sense of closure, a tangible connection to the trooper they had all missed. The family lingered over the casket, tracing their fingers over the folded flag, whispering goodbyes that had been delayed for too long. Their grief was raw, immediate, and deep. The river, the mystery, and the long years of waiting culminated in this single moment of finality. Outside the cemetery, the town had gathered. Streets were lined with residents, neighbors, and local business owners. Flags flew at half-mast, and the hum of the crowd was quiet, respectful. The funeral procession moved slowly. Police vehicles led the way, lights off, engines silent. Families watched as the patrol car carrying her casket passed, saluting, bowing heads, some wiping tears. For years, the absence had felt like a wound in the town's heart. Now, that wound was recognized, honored, and mourned collectively. Children, many who had never met her, held onto parents' hands, learning the weight of service and sacrifice. Fellow officers saluted as the procession passed. Some whispered prayers, others simply nodded, remembering a colleague lost too soon. The air was heavy but calm. Silence, for once, did not feel empty. It carried meaning, respect, grief, and acknowledgement of a life dedicated to protecting others. Conversations were hushed, cameras were down. The community was present not for spectacle but to honor memory and service. As the procession reached the gravesite, taps played, rifles fired in salute, and the casket was lowered. Dust from the earth rose, mingling with the cold air. Tears ran freely, but so did relief. A painful chapter had finally reached an ending. Even as people departed, the sense of unity remained. The trooper's life, her disappearance, and the mystery of the river had left scars, but they also left lessons in courage, patience, and devotion. The town would remember her, not just as a victim of tragedy, but as a hero whose legacy could never be erased. Even after the funeral, a sense of unease lingered. Her family had said goodbye, the town had honored her, but questions refused to disappear. Everyone asked the same thing: was it really an accident, or had someone made sure she never came home? Detectives reviewed the old files, the tire marks, and the crash site photos. Officially, it was ruled a tragic mistake, but some pieces still didn't fit together. Why hadn't the car been found in earlier searches? Why were the skid marks so abrupt and unusual? Locals whispered in diners, gas stations, and living rooms. Stories resurfaced about the late-night calls she answered, the dangerous assignments she handled, and people she might have crossed. The river had hidden the car for 16 years, and now it had revealed the body, but only part of the story. Her family refused to let go of the doubts. They spoke to reporters, reminding everyone that even though the body was found, the truth behind her final moments remained unclear. They wanted answers beyond the accident report. The mystery had grown over 16 years, and even with closure, the questions remained alive. They haunted the river, the road, and every corner of the small town that had watched her vanish. Some knew that no official report could fully explain the fear, the disappearance, or the silence that had lasted so long. Her death sparked tension across the community. People began to question more than the accident. They questioned the institutions that had investigated her disappearance. Rumors of cover-ups and negligence spread quickly. Some citizens believed that powerful individuals had intervened, ensuring she would never be found alive. Others defended law enforcement, insisting the accident theory was credible. The divide grew with every conversation. Trust in the police fractured. Meetings, town halls, and local news programs were filled with arguments and speculation. Citizens demanded transparency, wanting to know if someone had hidden the truth or if the river had simply done its work. The family felt the weight of this divide. They mourned their daughter while fighting to make sure her story was not forgotten or simplified. They encouraged the town to keep asking questions, to remember her dedication, and to hold institutions accountable. Even outside the town, the story traveled. Documentaries, news specials, and podcasts revisited the case, exploring both the accident theory and the whispers of foul play. People debated online, some convinced it was an accident, others certain it was more. The trooper's death became more than a single tragedy. It was a symbol of suspicion, fear, and the fragility of trust between the public and those sworn to protect them. The accident, the river, and the 16-year mystery all contributed to a story that refused to die quietly. Years after the discovery, her story returned to the public eye. Documentaries, news specials, and TV features examined the trooper's disappearance, the river, and the long wait of 16 years. Her face, smiling in old patrol photos, appeared on screens across the country. She became a symbol of dedication, of courage, and of the haunting mystery that had gripped her town. Interviews with fellow officers, family members, and locals reminded viewers of her life, her work, and the tragic circumstances of her death. Each retelling sparked conversations. Viewers debated the accident theory, discussed the river's secret, and speculated on rumors of corruption or foul play. Even people who had never met her felt the tension, the fear, and the courage of a young trooper taken too soon. The media coverage ensured that she would not be forgotten. Her name, her uniform, and her sacrifice remained in the public memory. Every story, every documentary brought new attention to questions that still had no answers. Even with her funeral behind them, her family wrestled with unanswered questions. They could lay her body to rest, but they could not bury the doubts and fears that had accumulated over 16 years. The official story of a tragic accident did not feel complete to them. Every detail of the patrol car, the river, and the crash site raised new concerns. They asked repeatedly, could it really have been an accident? Was there someone who wanted to hide the truth? They spoke to reporters and attended memorials, but their questions remained. Friends and neighbors offered comfort, yet the family's grief was mixed with suspicion. The loss of their daughter was compounded by the uncertainty of her final moments. Each anniversary, each news feature, reminded them of the silence that had lasted for so long. They could honor her life, but the why persisted, a shadow that no ceremony or discovery could fully erase. Even years later, their struggle to reconcile love, grief, and unanswered questions became part of the story itself. A reminder that closure can be elusive when truth is tangled with mystery. The patrol car in the river finally gave answers, but not peace. 16 years of searching had ended with a discovery both shocking and tragic, yet the full story of that night in 1991 remained hidden. People still debated what had really happened. Some insisted it had been a simple accident, a misjudged turn, slick roads, and bad weather. Others whispered that someone had forced the trooper off the road, that her disappearance was no accident at all. Rumors of corruption and cover-ups lingered like shadows over the town. Memorials, news specials, and documentaries reminded everyone of her bravery. Her name was spoken with reverence. Her uniform, her badge, her dedication to protecting others, all these details became symbols of courage. Yet her final moments, the truth of what she faced in those last hours, were gone with her. The river had swallowed them, leaving only questions. Even the townspeople who had never known her personally felt her absence. They remembered the panic, the years of searching, the silence that had haunted their streets. The river, calm and unyielding, became a symbol, a reminder that some mysteries cannot be fully solved, no matter how long the search. Her family honored her life while struggling with lingering doubts. They could say goodbye to her body, lay her to rest, and remember her courage. But the why and the how of her disappearance remained unanswered. 16 years had brought closure in part, but shadows lingered, carried by memories, rumors, and the river itself. The town learned a hard truth. Life can be fleeting, mysteries can remain unsolved, and courage can leave behind questions that refuse to die. The trooper's life was celebrated, her sacrifice remembered, but her last moments, swallowed by darkness, by water, and by time, were a story that would haunt the river and the town forever.